Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and you're listening into Beyond Fringe. Join me this evening as I sit down with Daniel Benoit of the ECBRO, the Eastern Central Bigfoot Research Organization. It was a pleasure interviewing Daniel, and as well as also I've known Daniel for quite some time now, beginning in the Crypto X days almost 4 years ago. And a lot of he talked about then, the same thing he talks about now, except there's more information and he has a bigger organization, and I'm very happy to hear about his newest accomplishments and endeavors into the crypto world, and that's why I wanted to bring him on this evening. And before we get him on the show, I just want to make one little short announcement, a very easy announcement, guys. If you want to get in contact with me, you can reach me at beyondfringeofficial@outlook.com. That again is beyondfringeofficial@outlook.com. And there will be an email also down below in the description if you're interested. Folks, without further ado, let's get Daniel on the show.
Oh, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here. I love talking Squatch.
Yeah, and no, nothing better than having a Squatch mug and some beef jerky at your side too, just to get the tradition going.
That's right.
Dan, we've spoken so many times on social media, so we already know each other pretty well. And even before we started doing the show, we spoke for about a good half hour, just conversing on just various topics. But I mean, I remember when I interviewed you 4 years back on a previous show I did. It was just like almost like the early stages, or at least the starting point foundation for ECBRO. But since 2017, what is the current buzz with ECBRO? What is your current events with ECBRO? What is going on with the organization? How are things going?
Well, I will say, over the years, I feel like we've actually come quite a long ways. But over the last few recent years, we've been trying to organize events and become more publicly known, and putting ourselves out there, sharing some information and reaching out to the general public, with holding annual events that are like every year. For the last few years, we've been hosting the annual Virginia Bigfoot Conference. And unfortunately, the third year got postponed, so we're working on that now. The first 2 years were quite the success. I'm very proud the way they went down. And, were they perfect? No, but I've had a lot of positive feedback over them. So, of course, when you run and operate everything on your own, there's only so much to, and so much to consider. When you have one person organizing a very large event, a lot of planning, and headache is involved with all that. So, also we've been conducting a lot more outings. When I say outings, as far as camping events, and we invite the public to come on out to participate with these events. And it's not just looking for Bigfoot. We invite people to come out there that don't get to come out, that want to get out, but also want somebody to guide them out there that are, so you got people that are not quite familiar with nature, but they love the subject that's involved with why we hold these outings. So to me, it's encouraging that these people want to come out and learn and get familiar with nature. And that's one of our key things that we can't, I can't stress enough about nature and wildlife. It's a big part of our education, and a lot of, it's a big part of what we do. And as far as the Bigfoot thing, we are the East Coast Bigfoot Researchers Organization. However, I'm trying to stress that, with what we do, wildlife is number one before Bigfoot. And so you'll learn that as, people that get involved and come together with us will learn that, well, yeah, these guys talk about wildlife. They're supposed to be Bigfoot researchers, so, and I will definitely be more than glad to get into that and explain all that later. So yeah, that's basically what's been going on. And I mean, it's like I said, it's been working out great. We've been getting some decent turnouts, great participants, and our participants and people that come out to enjoy what we do. Some of them get to experience what we get to experience. It's not always guaranteed, but you put enough time out there, you know, get out there, you never know what's going to happen because, um, you know, boots on the ground, dedicated time, and also, you know, being at the right place at the right time. You never know what might happen. So, that's kind of how it's been. So the last few years, I mean, we've had outings beyond that, but over the last few years, it's basically picked up a lot more as far as different activities that we try to host for both, you know, again, for all ages to the public. It's encouraging when we get children involved. Um, yeah, actually, more and more families are getting involved with children. Actually, for example, I mean, I guess I can include my girlfriend. You know, her and her kids. um, so you know, the kids love being out there and to see other kids interact and, you know, want to explore nature. That's the way it should be. You don't see much of that today. So, and that's another thing we try to put out there for the youth to get involved and to learn nature. You know, put away the PS4s, PS5s. You know, you put the cell phones down. When I was a kid, we didn't have cell phones that take up our time. So everything was playing outdoors. You know, either in the woods or being destructive with our toys. So, you know, that's the way it was with me growing up. But, you know, um, but yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more I could probably go on and get involved with, or, you know, share on, depending on what else you really want to get to hear from me tonight. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I just want to say I'm happy about your organization. I'm happy that your message has really gotten across, and also to engage with just a younger audience, and also to get them away, like you said. You know, no more PS4s, Xbox Series X's, and whatnot, all those consoles, and just to go out and do what normal kids did in the 20th century, just going out and exploring or playing football in person or hockey. You know, kids don't do that no more. So I really do like the directional phase to that. Plus, also too, to get families involved on something. And plus, I think one of the good things about the social media aspect now about Bigfoot investigators or research or studying it is the fact that you have a lot more people now who are engaged with the Facebook and know how to use the app and the social media site, and they can join these groups and they can just, like, you know, look at it and study or want to go out to these events. I mean, if there's an event over in Virginia and you got a guy that might live maybe a couple miles away, it's like, oh my god, you know, it's right in town. I can just go right there and, you know, be like, oh wow, I would have never known it would happen if I not look at it through an app or something. So I'm happy for you that you had your organization really kick so far. I mean, unfortunately with the pandemic though, you know, it did probably censor a lot of things in terms of restriction wise, but I really do wish you and your organization the best. It's just such a interesting concept, especially since you don't really see a lot of East Coast organizations out there.
right. You know, and let me go ahead and add in there real quick too. In the past, you know, I haven't seen that recently, but when you know, when I was still new into the Bigfoot world, you know, when I started off with all this, you know, everybody knew about the BFRO. You know, I've been mocked or joked with a few times, like, "Oh, he's trying to be the new Matt Moneymaker." I was like, "Oh my goodness, really?" The ECBRO. You know, it's this. You know, I started one of the reasons, and not the main reason. This is one of several reasons I started the ECBRO. Yeah, that's first. I was very independent. I didn't know anybody. You know, I acted alone. Um, but I started the ECBRO and I started gathering people, you know, that started learning about me and what I did. But the ECBRO, we do not compare ourselves to the BFRO in any way, shape, or form. Because for one thing, we conduct the same outings the BFRO does. The only difference between us and the BFRO, we don't charge. We are free. We want people to learn. We want people to experience things. All we do is ask when we have camping expeditions and outings, bring your own food, gear, shelter, and everything that we tell you that's required of you. Come out there, enjoy yourself, and, you know, learn and experience what you may will. You know, so um, but yeah, the only other thing about the BFRO, they're so large. Yes, they have money to create databases and look fancy, but yeah, we're not going to ask you to come on out and charge you $400 or $500 just to walk through the woods. You know, we're not like that. Come out and learn for yourself at your own expense. We're not going to charge you. You know, yes, we conduct fundraisers throughout the year, for various things that do help and assist, with various things. It does help with me to hold these outings, and then some of it goes towards other fundings and stuff, so I can continue with some of my research. It helps me get out there and continue on with things. But yeah, that's one thing I just wanted to throw out there real quick. As far as being the founder of the ECBRO, by no way, shape, or form, I'm not comparing myself to the BFRO, which I basically just did. Yeah, I'm sorry, but as far as I'm not trying to be no Matt Moneymaker. I'm Matt Moneymaker's got money. I don't have money. I work, live paycheck to paycheck. So that's, I keep a roof over my head, and that's about it. So, but yeah.
Yeah, that's and let me tell you something too, man. Like, I'll never understand why people charge for either expeditions or just to go on a walkabout with them for like a week or so. To me, I just kind of see it as just a good way of being a con artist and delivering such a great memo to people. But then you also take their work, and that's the thing too. Is like I feel that people try to find so many ways to make money in this field. And I want to ask you something personally because it does kind of go inside with what you just said. You guys, you go out there, it's free. You bring these people, as many people as you bring, and it's free of charge. Whereas, you have other organizations like the BFRO who will charge a certain amount. Do you feel that there's just like, why do you think why do you think people want to make money in this field exactly?
Well, number one is money. um, yeah, you can never go wrong with wanting to have money. Money never hurts. But the thing is, as far as Bigfoot has become a marketing, tool. Uh, Ever since Bigfoot's exploded, since the 1950s to the 60s, really, I guess the 60s where it's, the mid 50s. From there on up, it kind of exploded, and Bigfoot became a huge phenomenon, and it's been put out there more in the public, and everybody was, goo goo gaga over Bigfoot. And even till today, you Google Bigfoot merchandise. I mean, Bigfoot's become an icon. It's, people learned like, hey, if they want to make money, they use Bigfoot for money, but yeah, I don't know, just I believe some people do, use Bigfoot to make money, but yet you got honest people, but you got some people. I'm not going to throw no names out there. I'm not going to even bring up any YouTube channels that, I've had dealings with certain individuals over the years, but I won't make a mention of any names. But some of them will do what they can for the attention. Some of them will put money, ask for money. I've asked for money too through fundraisers, but I always try to make sure somebody's getting something in return. Like my Bigfoot T-shirt fundraiser that just finished up. When people bought a T-shirt, they got a T-shirt. Now, did I make profit off of that? After it made so many sales, yes, I made a little something off of it, but not enough to go out and buy a brand new car. But I don't know. Again, it's just something that people take advantage. People take advantage of something like that. Just for any other thing that might become popular, but again, it's a marketing tool. People take advantage of it, and yeah, there's people out there that love, breathe, sleep, eat, and everything else Bigfoot, and there's people out there that will jump on anything Bigfoot related. So, but and there's people out there that know that, so they're gonna put Bigfoot out there on their merchandise and make that sale. But that's just the way I look at it. Again, it's a marketing tool.
Yeah, no,
So
and you're 100% right. And for some people, I can understand why they'd want to market off of it, but at the same time, I guess I remember I had to sit down. I talked to a couple skeptics, and they explained to me about how they kind of see like the idea of Bigfoot is like monopolized, like the typical movie that comes out that's a big trend. Let's just take, for example, a film like John Wick, and everybody loves, Keanu Reeves and how adorable he is and what he does. I like him, but you're going to monopolize them and, create this phenomenon. And it's like the Chuck Norris jokes from the 80s, could do this or
Yeah.
like, blink and a snake will blow up or some shit. And, so you look at Bigfoot too, and it's commercially monopolized, and how it's utilized too. I mean, reality television shows, they always bring on people, whether they do dramatizations of, this guy who had seen one through his car, or somebody had seen it through their window at their house. So it's been heavy influenced. So I can see why on that aspect, but I can also see on the other side of it too, which I want to ask you, by the way. Are you in a sense a little skeptical of Bigfoot or any other cryptid out there? Do you have any skepticism on you?
Yes, I do, but not on Bigfoot. I am a solid knower, not just a believer, but I am a solid knower on Bigfoot. But now on other cryptids, there's a few I can name that I'm very skeptical
Sure.
on. Um, you know, I'm almost afraid to speak of it because every time I share my opinion about it and my belief, how I'm skeptical. Oh man,
I won't judge
people.
you here, and if
Oh,
anybody does want to judge,
I'm sure you won't, but I'm sure others will. I've been judged and brutally attacked verbally
I've been
over
slandered and
social
publicly
media.
attacked too, buddy. So I totally understand.
But Dogman, I'm sorry, Dogman. I'm not. I just have a hard time grasping the reality of a Dogman, Wolfman. That's something I only see in movies. Um, I mean, people ever ask, well, I guess I see canine tracks out in the woods, but I know there's wolves out there, there's coyotes out there. I mean, people don't realize people are posting in these Dogman groups of these canine tracks. People don't realize there's wolves with tracks as big as your hand. There's big wolves out there. Depends on the species. Um, but there's some people that claim they actually have seen them. So, and then this is where I stand on it. I said, okay, they're seeing something, but I'm not there claiming what they're seeing. Depending on, most of the people, they see something like this, they say it's at nighttime or in the evening. Oh, it had a snout, it had a tail. I don't know. Are they misidentifying something? Could it be a misidentification? I don't know. It could be, but on my behalf, as much as I spend time out in the woods, day and night, I've explored deep in the woods, and spent a lot of time out in the woods. There's nothing that ever pointed or towards any other subject being out there but a Bigfoot. I mean, my main thing is when I'm out in the woods, and I tell everybody else this: when you go out looking for a Bigfoot, forget about Bigfoot. Get Bigfoot off of your brain. I go out looking for every other known species, because when you could look and you start studying and focusing for other known species, let's look for deer tracks. Let's look for wolf tracks. Let's look for bear tracks. You know what? That's what we're going to focus on. Then anything else that's different, what I call the unknown, it's going to stand apart. You're going to notice it. Because one of my mottos, one of my phrases, one of the things I love to say is, how can if you don't know what is known, how can you search and find what is considered to be unknown? You got to know and understand what is known before seeking the unknown. And a lot of people don't understand that, because if you don't know what a wolf track looks like, if you don't know what a bear track looks like, and you go out there and you find these, oh, that's a Bigfoot, that's a wolfman. That's my point. People give these other alleged cryptids and these other other possibilities credit before even realizing or considering what's more logical first. So that's how I look at it. But again, Dogman, that's one of the things I'm very skeptical about. Again, there's others, like, I don't know. I don't even want to say Lizard Man. I don't really hear that mentioned much. But now Mothman, that's an interesting one. I'm skeptical about what that is. But what are people seeing? They're calling the Mothman. Could it be some big giant owl or some other bird? There's been so many different reports about the alleged Mothman. Now, again, I believe people are seeing something, but what are they considering the Mothman? Oh, it has big red glowing eyes. If you look into it, you could, I don't know, go crazy or become disoriented or so, whatever. But I don't know. So there's a lot of different things out there. But as far as the Mothman, I've been involved with several different discussions on my own podcasts in the past. Talking about this, and um, yeah, it could be a number of things, but I can't make no proper judgment or make no claim because I've never seen anything, you know, in my own eyes. So it's hard to really speculate too much on that. So
Yeah, no, and it's funny that you brought up the skepticism with dogmen because I actually had spoken to a couple investigators who had a very interesting opinion on dogmen, but don't think of it as like a dogman. They think of it as an aggressive Bigfoot that is a bit more, uh, not just aggressive, but intelligent and would kind of resemble something a little rogue or something like frightening in a sense. But when it comes to the muzzle and the snout or the pointy ears, there's that idea too that it could just be like the way the hair looks on a Bigfoot, perhaps when they're seeing these things. And also, a lot of people often try to distinguish with dogmen the idea of them being demonic because of the whole red eyes or the amber eye shine, but we see red eye shine on any other zoological animal, whether it's deer or bear or raccoon. It's all about the glare in the
yes,
reflections and what it illuminates. So that's also been a kind of something I thought about. When they were explaining this to me, I personally have had cases with a dogman like creature. So yeah, I'm under the impression that it could exist, but I've also never seen one. But at the same time, I also have only collected eyewitness accounts, and when I've investigated areas, yeah, I do feel uncomfortable, but that also just could be the fact being is that there could just be another cryptid there, or just the idea that it's just the woods. And that's also something that when you take as a serious researcher, you have to put down your thoughts about it too, and not think of what we think of in movies, those typical red herrings, as they say, where
right.
people will feel watched in the woods, or people will feel like something's going to happen, like a jump scare, something's going to watch them, like it's like a slasher film. So like that's the thing too with dogmen that I think a lot of people also get. But it's interesting you bring it up, and I respect your opinion, man. I do, because listen, it's not every day I have someone come on the show, or in general I sit down with people who have a skepticism about dogmen because of the way it is. Because I've often kind of thought too, what if this thing is just a different variant of Bigfoot that's just a bit rogue and a bit like an aggressive type?
Well, with you mentioning that brings something up I want to share because again, I know several people, I should say many people share the same possibility of belief where they believe that they are different types of Bigfoot. Now, I myself have been in this discussion and shared my belief on this. I do agree. I do agree that there is different types of Bigfoot. When I say different types of Bigfoot, think of the species or strains. For example, we're human. Me, you, we got people north to south, east and west, and we all look different. We all come in different shapes and sizes. People from Asia, India, different parts of Asia, they're usually a smaller people. They're smaller, slender people. And then of course maybe Russia or different places, you might have a little bit tougher, rugged, more people. Every region, every place has their own characteristics of the type of people that live there. Now, the way I look at Bigfoot, yes, same thing. Based off of the region or they live in, they adapted to that land over a period of time, and that's what they, that's part of why they look the way they like down in Florida and Louisiana. You got the skunk ape, and Bigfoot's been reported to be 8 to 12, 13 feet tall out in the Pacific Northwest. People claim there's some big, giant, very large ones. Here on the East Coast, there's been numerous reports of Bigfoot sightings, especially just from the ones I've gathered. For reports I've learned from, and investigated, they range from 6 feet to 8 feet on set, on average. Yes, on here and there, you might hear some a little bigger. However, again, there's different types of Bigfoot. Now, I'll add this in here too, because this one thing I always share. Not everybody's going to agree with this or believe this, but based off of some of the research I've done over the years, with my observations from the field, being out in the woods, and then doing my studies and comparing notes to experiences and findings, I come to a conclusion that Bigfoot is some form of primate, unknown to man, unclassified, also undiscovered. And with that being said, we have non-human primates, according to the world of science, when we got our chimpanzees, bonobos, baboons, et cetera, they are our non-human primates. Me, you, we're considered human primates. Now, with that being said, people believe Bigfoot's human, but then if you tell them, well, I think he's some kind of non-human primate, when they hear the word primate, they don't understand. Well, no, he's not a primate. He's a human. There's contradiction there because they don't know what they're talking about. So, therefore, understanding primates in general, human or non-human, there's, I don't believe there could be an in between. People believe, okay, well, he's half this and half human. You know, no two different species could breed within themselves. It's like you can't take an orange and you can't get an orange out of an apple. You can't get an apple out of an orange. You can't get a banana from out of a pineapple. It's the same concept. It's the way science is. And even though it's been tried and tested in way back when, trying to get a human baby, trying to get a baby and a human woman and a chimpanzee to crossbreed. It's not going to happen. I don't care how science says, well, we're so closely related. Well, you're not going to get it because the DNA is not the same. Doesn't matter how close it is, it's not the same. Therefore, there's no relation. There's no strain of that species. Example, cats, cougars, panthers, bobcats, they could all mate because they're of the same family. They're of the same strain. Horses, donkeys, mules, zebras, whatever, they're all of the same strain, same bloodline. But, that's the point of look at all the species of dogs. We got foxes, coyotes, wolves, they're all of the same strain. So people don't understand when they got to look at this and consider this very carefully, how I look at things. So again, with that little illustration, I wanted to add that in there because with what you said, and it's what made me think of this, to share this, that there's different descriptions when it comes to Bigfoot, because if there's any reported now I can't say anything for a tail, but I don't know if really people ever claim of seeing a tail, but think of a baboon. Picture a baboon, a full-grown wild baboon. They got a big canine-looking snout and they got the ears up on the side of the head. So if you look at a baboon, they got canines. They got a snout and canines just like a dog does. So now, if Bigfoot, now don't get me wrong, I'm not making Bigfoot equal to one of our non-human primates, but I believe there is possibly. I have no proof. This is where I have to be careful in how I throw this out there. For those that don't believe in what I'm sharing, just give it consideration. That's all I'm asking. Think about this, put it in the back of your head, whatever. Because this is one of the many things I get ridiculed for, because people don't understand my illustration or my view on this. But just give it the possibility of thought where, hey, maybe we might have our different types of Bigfoot might somehow be compared to our non-human primates. Now maybe they're cousins. I believe that they got to be maybe of the same bloodline. They could be, a subspecies that became different over a period of time. A good example. A lot of people believe that Gigantopithecus and Bigfoot are related. For the longest time, I had a belief in that. Then I tended to, I started to back away from that for a while. Then I started to look back at it again. And the thing is, well, Bigfoot can't be Gigantopithecus because he was only, Gigantopithecus originated out of Asia, so in China, whatever, so there's no way they could have been over there and over here. Well, there's a lot of, I won't get into all that, but everybody believes that everything was connected at one point, the Barren Land Bridge and all the continents were once together before the flood separated the land masses. So, anyone who wants to consider that, think about that too, because I do believe that everything was put together. And then when the world was once flooded and when the waters receded, there's evidence of the world being flooded. So you can't deny that. There's evidence that Noah had his ark on Mount Everest, so the gopher wood is still there. Everything's, well, as far as the great flood of the whole world, all that's been discovered and proven and whatever. So, but yeah, that's where I look at things and how I stand on that. Sorry for my rambling there, Chris.
Yeah, no, you're good. Listen, I mean, like I said, it's not every day I talk to somebody who has a good, interesting, and valid point in reference to what possibly a dogman could be. And yeah, that might upset people in the dogman community. I know a lot of people that I know follow dogman, and I've talked about follow dogman for the longest time. They definitely would be a little upset about it, but at the same time, you look at the idea of evolution, right? And you mentioned evolution in the sense of it with different variants of animal, including us as humans, because we evolved. I mean, we went from being cave people to friggin' different cultures, different ethnics, and it's just how we as a society have evolved. So ultimately, as time went on, we've learned different traits and skills and different types that we can be. The same rules go for Sasquatch. Same rules would go for anything of that nature. But see, I think where a lot of people would also kind of feel with Bigfoot or Dogman being in the same boat and bracket is where they get the idea of a lot of the reports, because people often say in a lot of the Dogman cases that people feel like they're threatened by these things, that it chases after them, they'll keep up with cars. But we also hear that too in Bigfoot reports, and even in Bigfoot cases, you hear the tree knocks, you hear the vocals, you hear the the boop boop, and then you also hear with them throwing rocks or little stones at you. And, you hear also those cases as well. So it's almost like no different. But it is something that I think too with Dogman is a little it's still relatively brand new, right? So we've had a few authors out there write some pretty interesting books on them, and while at the same time the atmosphere of it is that it's not 200% because we don't really know what Dogman is. Plus also too, we get into the whole theory of what Dogman could be, and we think of it as a demon, or we think of it as some format of we look at a Nephilim or of that nature. But it is definitely one of those big contradictions, and I think for those who are veteran Sasquatch and researchers, they'll say they don't believe in Dogman. I totally understand. If anything, too, Dogman's been a relatively new cryptid. It's been around for almost 35 years, so it's not as like Bigfoot, where it's been around since the 19th century.
Yeah, as far as as far as the legend goes, and I've looked into it very, very briefly in the past, and now supposedly stories go back so far, according to some people that shared that with me, and well, I just have trouble finding it, because there's been more Bigfoot reports and Bigfoot related described creatures, all across the world, dating hundreds of years ago. I mean, everyone gives the Native Americans credit for documenting all the wildlife and what they considered the big hairy man. Well, show me one of their drawings that resemble the wolf man. No one's ever showed me nothing of that. They couldn't. Nobody's ever produced any such thing. So I like to believe that, yes, Native American, tribes all across the United States and the North American continent would have produced some kind of pictorial evidence because they document everything else they encounter. So to me, that would be, a lot of people like to use Native Americans as their evidence towards a lot of different things, regardless if it's anecdotal evidence, verbally passed down information, or vice versa, whatever. If so yeah, why doesn't Native Americans have document evidence, documentation? That's one thing I would definitely love to ask somebody that, because I just thought of that. So I know, just sometimes when I get to rambling, the weirdest things pop in my head.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that, man. I'm the same way.
So, but yeah, I don't know. That's just me, because the other thing is, as far as Dogman, Dogman became a folklore story, a song. Then after the song came out, then all of a sudden, yeah, back in the 80s, early 80s, as far as, well, maybe it could have been the late 70s, but I believe it was the very early 80s, is when there was a Dogman song. And then Dogman, the story of the Dogman became a folklore story around campfires. Then after that, it's actually been, supposedly alleged stories and reports came about after all that. And when I've shared people, I said, well, yeah, and this developed out of Michigan, out of the state of Michigan is where this took place. And then all people say, no, it's been going on a lot longer than that. Well, I don't know. Maybe I need to look into things more. So, then they turn to the Egypt and look at, they try to give the Egyptian gods Anubis, hey, well, the Egyptians believed in something. I said, no, that was one of their pagan gods that they created. That didn't exist, So, Egyptians and a lot of other ancient tribes and stuff, they were very, what's the word I'm looking for? Where they believed in, they created their own false gods and everything else, but enough of that. But so I don't, they like to use that as Dogman evidence. So it's like, whatever.
The Anubis in the underworld.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. If you want to learn about it, never mind. I was gonna make a joke. I'll tell you offline later. I was gonna make a joke about Anubis. Me and my buddy Bobcat, wow, we joke about that all the time. It is pretty funny and hilarious.
It's funny though too, because with Anubis, we date back to it in the hieroglyphics of the Egyptian time. And
right.
Where that all starts is where the foundation of the Dogman would go. I remember my introduction to Dogman was from a movie called The Beast of Bray Road, which was based on the original reports and book of the Beast of Bray Road from Elkhorn, Wisconsin, in the late 80s, early 90s. So, then I was introduced to the song, the Michigan Dogman song by Steve Cook, which is a very good song for like a campfire tale, but at the same time, I can see why veteran Bigfoot researchers would be skeptical of that, because of the fact that it originated really from a song, then was converted to a book, because the song came out first. That was in 1987, so that was a very that was like 5 years later. The Beast of Bray Road reports were really kicking off, and from then on out, we were introduced to the books and the movie, and then also the documentaries they did. Then the Gable film. I don't know if you know about the Gable film. That's another popular footage.
Not familiar with that one, but yeah, I knew about the Beast of Bray Road. Because I know there's books about that as well. So yeah.
It's an interesting topic, and I mean, listen, I know a lot of people may not agree with it, but also too, I mean, I don't think any other investigator out there would be a full investigator or a true researcher unless they were skeptical of certain things. See, my skepticism is creatures, and I've done like little character bios on them in the past, but for example, like the lizard man of Scaraway Swamp, for example, in South Carolina or the other Carolinas. You have that cryptid. You have the Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. That's another one, and that's the one that kind of sticks to me up a little bit, because you mentioned about what it could be, and I remember when there was the reports coming out, and a lot of the police who were skeptical of it, or a lot of the more people who were residents there were thinking it was like a sandhill crane, which was as tall as some of the descriptions were going, and that the red eyes were the body, the torso, or the area of the crane itself. So, you mentioned the Mothman being another interesting topic, but like cryptids like the goat man or the lizard man or the gator man, or even fox man. I don't know if you know about fox man, but that's
That one, I never heard of that one. I've heard of the goat man. I've heard of a lot of them, but the fox man, that's one I've never heard of.
I think the problem with all these names is that people are just taking almost like you see it like a fantasy of these creatures that are normal zoological animals, and they become hybrids and they turn them into these giant characters. Lizard man. You think of lizard man from the Marvel comics, and then you also think of just like the fox man. It's like a fox man now. This is a cryptid, and then
Yeah.
even the name Dogman. Just to go back to it real quick, I wanted to ask you this. I mean, if this were to exist, would Dogman be like an appropriate name? Would you think for it or no?
If he was ever proven to exist, Dogman. That's a good question because maybe I mean, it's just because now one thing I like to share with people: the only Dogman I actually officially believe in is a group of Native Americans that were referred to or labeled as Dogmen. They were soldiers, warriors, and but yeah, I believe they were Cheyenne. I could be wrong, but I believe they were part of the Cheyenne Indians. They were known as Dogmen. They were warriors. They were a group of Native Americans. But I'm sure some of them maybe have used wolf hides and stuff part of their clothes. But anyway, but yeah, that's the one Dogmans I've always really officially believed in. And like dog soldiers in the military. But being a dog man, if it is a real, upright werewolf, I mean, people say dog man, but what's the difference between a dog man and a wolf man? Aren't they considered the same? I mean,
The big difference I think between them is, for one, like when we think of like the Dogman cryptid, for example, when we try to get an idea out of it, I've always, and I think as many have also put out, we think of like a werewolf from Hollywood. So we think of Dog Soldiers, think of the Howling, American Werewolf in London. And you think of all these werewolf movies where these creatures were utilized and seen with great makeup effects. And
right.
when people see these things, they go ahead and they're thinking, "Oh my God, that's a werewolf." We think of a werewolf from those movies and werewolf and stuff. But see, the weird thing about all this is that I feel that if it was a wolfman or a werewolf, I wouldn't think. I'd only think we go by the mythology of European mythos of these things transforming on a full moon, in which a lot of these dogman cases are reportedly not on a full moon, and some are, but not all of them are, and that's the thing. And they've also been seen in the daytime. So,
Yeah.
um, what we talked about earlier, which was about like where we think these creatures are naturally or if they're supernatural, both of us believe it's flesh and blood creatures. I don't think that if a wolfman was to be the supernatural creature in European mythology, I don't think it would be doing these type of things such as being out not on a full moon or during the daytime. So I think there's a heavy exaggeration with it, and anything that is not that, I think, is something totally different. See, now I'm a little bit of a believer in the skinwalkers and the Wendigo. Go back to Native American culture, for example. So
Yeah.
that's a totally different topic, but that's where I kind of feel there is a bit of a difference between the two, because I mean, for one, if the dogman or whatever we want to call it, a man wolf, these things were to transform on a full moon or to be seen during a full moon, only on a full moon, or that they're doing crazy things, then I feel that that's something totally different. And even if it were, in your case, if it were to exist, if it was something totally out of the blue. And if another thing is too, is that if they were so much of that supernatural or that spiritual aspect, I would want to know how they teleport, how would they go into, because this also happens in the Bigfoot community too, Dan, is about the supernatural aspect that Bigfoot can jump into portals, or the cloaking, they're invisible and stuff like Predator.
Oh yes, absolutely. Keep in mind, yeah, I've actually heard it all. Um, and there's a lot I could kind of get into with that. However, one thing I do want to make mention of and throw out there, and you know, you made mention of it here. Native Americans. I have a good friend of mine. I've been in several discussions with him. He's Native American, and he could tell you he was of Apache descent, but when he says Native American, he does not like to label himself to one tribe because basically all Native Americans were all considered brothers and sisters, you know of their whatever, as far as tribe wise. But anyway, I've been in a lot of different discussions with him, and he's a big time believer and knower of Bigfoot. He does believe in some other things, but one thing he shared with me, because he has a lot of information, that's been passed down to him from older elder Native American, and when it comes to Native American folklore, the stories and information that's been passed down, one thing he shared with me, and I'll never forget it, and I believe this, that Native Americans love their folklore. Now, with that being said, I think it's very important that we are careful when we listen to stories that are shared from Native Americans, because when Native Americans, especially when they refer to a lot of the wildlife, I'll use bears for example, and the eagle, they refer to all of them as the spirit animal, and even though we know them as a flesh and blood animal, so Native Americans refer to them in a spiritual sense, even though we know they're flesh and blood. Um, you know, so when it comes to Native Americans, and their stories and their information that gets passed down or shared present day, again, I think it's very, very important that we're careful how we take things and to understand it in a literal sense. When they share this information, because not all of them is going to explain this to you, and I believe with the information that my Native American buddy explained a lot of this to me, you know. Um, but yeah, as far as I'm going to use the black bear versus the grizzly, because here on the East Coast we have a lot of black bears, especially here in Virginia. We have tons of black bears, and I have so many different encounters. Some close, some distant, and most of them happen during the daytime. Yes, I've seen some at nighttime. Thank God I was in my vehicle when I did see them because they were very close. but but now, one thing the Native Americans believe when it comes to the black bear versus grizzly, they're two different spirits. There, you got the good and the evil spirit. The black bears, they're the gentle, calm, shy, mainly elusive being. The grizzly, on the other hand, is the very aggressive, mean, aggravated, evil spirit, sense when it comes to grizzly. So, but yeah, Native Americans believe in all living creatures in a spiritual sense, in one way, shape, or form. But again, Native Americans, they love their folklore. I'll never forget that. I will share that by another Native American. That he says, Daniel, we love our folklore. So he says, and again, it goes with that saying, you got to take everything with a grain of salt. Be careful how you hear things. Be careful how how things are understood in your mind. So, but yeah, that's something I wanted to throw out there and share, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely, it does, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't really know. See, what you've really presented here so far tonight is very good examples of things that not a lot of people really take into consideration. They don't take into consideration a lot about befriending somebody who's a native and thinking a lot about what their culture is, what they say, and what they do. And you're 100% right, because they do see these animals like this. And it also goes back to an argument I had with people about these things being demonic in a sense, because it's like this. It's like if a Bigfoot is demonic because it does this or that, then would a bear be demonic because it attacks a deer, which is natural prey to them? It's that idea where it's like do these things, are they demonic because they do this and that, even though it's just natural? It's nature. That is how it is done. We as human beings, we're no different. Yes, we eat animals. We're some of us are meat eaters. Some of us are plant eaters, but we also do things that are despicable that are also part of human nature. One being is that we do crimes. We do horrible things. I know I don't. I know you don't. But there are people in our society that do that, and that's just the big. That's just my whole idea of comparison is that I don't think everything is necessarily evil, and I do think that these Bigfoots out there do have personalities just like a human being does. Some are good, some are bad, but also too, there are reasons why Bigfoot act up the way they act up, and I wanted to ask you this. Um, what are some of the big mistakes a lot of investigators or newcomers in the field normally make when they go out and investigate?
Well, for one, I will say this much: uh, they have the wrong thought on their mind to begin with. Because one thing I've shared in several presentations, regardless if it's been one of my local seminars or one of the few, conventions I got to speak at. Um, One thing I like to tell people, and I've shared this on my podcast in the past, is when you go out looking for Bigfoot, if you're new, because I've been asked numerous times, a lot of new people getting involved or wanting to get involved with looking for Bigfoot. Well, the first thing I tell people when you go out in the woods, don't even think about Bigfoot. Get Bigfoot off your mind. Forget all about Bigfoot. Because when you go out there with everything on your mind, you look at a broken tree or, oh, look at this. This looks like an interesting structure. Everybody gives Bigfoot credit for something that's, for something else that's most likely responsible. They fail to neglect the other logical explanations or possibilities. Again, a lot of people, it's kind of hard to throw out there because a lot of people do it for fun and entertainment or for their own purposes. But the thing is, for those who are wanting to take it seriously, you got to remember the process of elimination and ruling things out. Me, I'm not a scientist. I don't have no science degrees, whatever, but I do a lot of studying and observations in and out of the field. But you got to consider the other possibilities. It's I call that basic science. But as far as beginners, you got to get familiar with your area. You got to know the land you're about to venture into. You got to take time to explore it, to get familiar with the layout of the land. Two, get familiar with the wildlife that inhabits that area. The other thing I get all the time, because I tell people, become very well acquainted and familiar with bears, their tracks, behaviors, and the patterns of a bear, for numerous reasons. Because bear tracks are highly misidentified and pointed out as Bigfoot tracks, for a number of reasons too. Because their hind foot looks like our feet, especially depending on the size of them. A young bear looks like a young person's track, a young child's track. And one of their common things is a double bear step. Sometimes you could tell. Sometimes they're easy to identify a double bear step. Not all the time. Sometimes their double bear steps are slightly offset. Where their hind foot meets the track of their front paw. That's very important. I've been fooled a few times myself. That's where you have to step back and really look at the situation, study, observe, look for a trackway. It's simple. A lot of it's simple and basic. Again, so a lot of people are going out there, misinformed, not aware, and that's a part of what I do. That's a big part of what I believe in and sharing is spreading awareness, not just about who I am and what I do, but for the very fact that people got to become aware of wildlife. It's very important. Sometimes when I share this information, I feel like I'm talking to young kids, or some adults don't want to hear it because, oh, I know my bear, I know my wildlife, I know this and that, but they're giving Bigfoot credit for what, for something that belongs to a whole totally different subject, So, so again, you got to get familiar with your subject. You got to get familiar with your wildlife. If you neglect your wildlife and give Bigfoot all the credit, you're in serious error. I mean, as much as I hate to say it, I mean, I'm not calling any particular person, you know, uh, dumb or stupid or ignorant, but there is those kind of people out there, you know. So you just have to really be careful when you go out there. So again, become familiar. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're 50, 60 years old. If you're going to go out there pointing at every track out there being a Bigfoot or some other cryptid that you want to give credit to and not realize, oh, this is only this, you know, it's people will just let their fantasy and imagination become their reality, you know. So their perception of reality is not a logical reality, you know, if that makes any sense. So but you know, to throw a little Bigfoot 101 out there, as I've always said, you know, scientifically looking at the subject of Bigfoot, and this goes for any cryptid, but we're on this topic of Bigfoot. I'll tell you, I'll share my basic methods on Bigfoot. You know, to study and try to have any form of understanding of yourself that where you'll draw your own conclusion. Everyone's going to have to come to a point where they have to draw their own conclusions. But in order to do so, you have to stop and make notes. You have to study the subject. What do you best feel that it's related to? Me, I'll use my example. I'll use my methods. I believe Bigfoot is some type of primate. Again, unknown, unclassified, undiscovered. But with that being said, I'm going to start comparing them to other primates. And with everything that we experience, regardless if it's whatever type of vocalizations, even the whoops, I've experienced the whoops very close to me. So has so many others. The rock throwing, the rock stacks, and some of these structures that we could point towards that they were made by hands. Now we have to ask ourselves if we come to the conclusion that something was made by hands, well, for what purpose? What reason? Broken trees. Now, nature and wildlife are highly responsible for a lot of that. You know, wind damage, snow damage. Bears like to push and bend on trees. Bears will uproot a tree. Bears will bend a tree. You know, bears snap trees. Bears scratch trees. You know, there's a lot of little basic things people got to understand. So, and there's so much I can really share, throw out there. But again, you got to pick a subject and compare notes to. So everything that we associate with Bigfoot and point towards Bigfoot, the unknown vocalizations, like I said, the rock throwing, what other species is known for doing that? Our non-human primates do that. Chimpanzees, gorillas, they all have their own behaviors. They are known for doing these. You know, a chimpanzee, yeah, they make whooping sounds. They throw rocks. They throw sticks. Gorillas will take a small tree. They'll bust it. They'll bang it. They'll slap the ground. They'll beat on things for a number of reasons. You know, so we're finding and experiencing these kind of things in our own, you know, neck of the woods here. So people want to say, well, Bigfoot's a human. So why is he doing that? If he's a human, then start studying why do humans do this? Is this a normal human trait or a normal human characteristic? You know, pick a subject and compare notes. Find the one that most closely resembles and relates to that species with their behaviors and patterns. The only thing a person could really say that's humanoid about a Bigfoot is besides their track. I mean, most of the tracks that people come across do look like human feet. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that doesn't make it human. We're never going to know what Bigfoot really is unless there is a body to compare DNA samples to. There's been alleged studies, and I'm not going to try to get into all this, but I will throw this out there for the record because people fell for this and they go along with this. But there's been studies conducted with all these different alleged samples, and they weren't properly conducted and sequenced. But yet people want to say they're all Bigfoot related. You don't have a body without a Bigfoot body to test and compare these samples to. You have no way of saying they were Bigfoot, because if we do have a body, nobody knows about it. The government might have something. A lot of people believe the government could be involved. Might have. Maybe they are. I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, we don't know. So, but yeah, that's the way I throw things out there. That's the way I look at things. So, and I don't ask anybody to believe that. They're going to believe what they want to believe, regardless. And I'm not trying to come across as a know-it-all, so I want to make that clear too. But I look at things different than others. So, but yeah.
Yeah, no, listen, I mean, I like how, and this is what I tell everybody who's a guest on the show, to express how you go about things the way you want to go about things, because not everyone's going to have the same belief system as the big famous celebrity in the field, because that's just not how research should be. And that's just how really an investigator evolves, is by building their own thesis and taking things differently versus how we're adjacent to and taking things, because it's what the normal norm is for a lot of Bigfooters or dogman investigators. And if you really look at it too, I think one of the toughest problems that we're facing in the cryptid community right now is the race to see who has the best evidence. And I think that's kind of something that we kind of divulge ourselves into. It's like an obsession almost, where we're focused more on trying to see who has better evidence, or if this will be proven true or not, or who has the best eyewitness cases. And it's like a competition almost. And to me, I just don't understand the taste in that. I kind of see it as an insult, really, because it's like, if you want to find truth, go out and investigate, but also too, don't be a follower, be a leader, but don't be so cocky about it either. It's just so
Exactly. Exactly.
it,
The thing is, with that being said, I agree with you 100%. And one thing that does irk me is I've been ridiculed and blamed for for trying to come across as somebody who's trying to get big in the Bigfoot world. By no means. I've actually backed off and slacked off a lot on it, because you know, I do share things. I don't share. I used to post a lot of my beliefs and my research openly. I still do so, but not as much as I used to, because especially when I first started off. I mean, I was kind of young when I started off with this, and people look down on the younger people. They're like, "Oh, they don't know nothing." He's inexperienced, and I'm 40. I'll be 41 here next month, and so to some, I'm still very young, and like they consider like, well, you can't know too much. I know a lot about wildlife. I know a lot about nature. I grew up in it. My father's had me out, hunting when I was a young kid. So I've got familiar with wildlife and nature. And as much as I explored over the years on my own, I go out in the woods, all the time by myself, and I explore by myself, deep in the woods, up and down hills and mountains and ridges. And I've spent a lot of times out there by myself camping at night. And, some people say, well, you're pretty brave for doing that. Well, no, I'm relaxed out there. I'm comfortable. That's where I feel best at home. I feel more at home when I'm out in the woods, because I could, that crazy saying, that corny saying, well, become one with nature. I kind of do. I really do. When I'm out there, I feel like when I'm waiting for to hear wildlife become alive at night, but when I'm out there, I just feel like I'm a part of it, and I get to experience a lot of cool stuff, And when I hear the different sounds of animals out there, regardless if it's just a barred owl, a coyote, or whatever it may be, I love sitting there. And it's like, and I'm just sitting there listening to it all, taking it all in, and people don't realize just being out there and enjoying that little bit of, tranquility and hearing the wildlife. It's a learning experience all in itself, And then sometimes if you listen carefully, the unknown will stand out, but again, that's that's being able to understand and identify what is known. because the unknown will make itself known. So that's the way I look at it.
And yeah, 100% on that too. And that's why I really do like your philosophy on a lot of things. And that's another thing I wanted to bring up was the fact that I notice this with a lot of people in big community groups now where they'll tear each other apart because you'll have that one veteran in the group who will sit there who's been an outdoorsman his whole life, not just in growing up in like wilderness or, next house is 5 miles down, but like people who have even served in the military, for example, and they've been out and about, they've seen the woods, they've done these training, these crazy regiments. And one of the things that really fascinates me is when people really attack somebody because they're throwing out some survival advice that just is only beneficiary. I had a guy who's a former cop, and he was basically attacked by some newbie who basically said to him, "Oh, I guess you're an expert because you know it all." When deep down, everybody comes from different, cloths of experience. I mean, for God's sakes, I've met more people who know more about outdooring than a guy who has been out and about in the woods who's in his 70s. And it's interesting to say the least. I mean, those are the people you want to befriend the most because those are the people that will survive throughout the apocalypse and know what to do in the hunting wilderness, know how to grow natural food and stuff like that. I mean, how to hunt. So like that. I think I don't know about if you see it a lot, but I often see it a lot where people just rip apart somebody because their opinion and how they go about survival and crap is like they get attacked for it by somebody because they don't like what they're saying. And that's another thing too, is that when someone's belief system gets affected in the field, it becomes a reality for them to want to try and screw somebody over. And it's like, well, holy shit, dude. I didn't know you were this immature. Like it's pathetic.
Yeah, well, totally. I know exactly what you're talking about because I personally, for one, and I've seen it happen to others, but I personally, over the years, has been attacked verbally. There's a lot of warriors on social media. Let me tell you. But my thing is to them, they want to disagree with my opinion, or that's fine. But they want to tell me I'm wrong because I believe this. Well, prove me wrong. Don't tell me, prove me wrong. If because I'm not. If I state a fact, any facts I share, wildlife, they're wildlife or nature related. If I'll never state a fact about Bigfoot because there is no facts about Bigfoot except for those who have seen him. We know he's big and hairy. That's probably the only safest fact I could probably throw out there. You know, but yeah, there's a lot of information and a lot of opinions and conclusions I could throw out about Bigfoot, but I will never throw a fact out about Bigfoot. Have I seen a Bigfoot? Have I experienced Bigfoot? Yes, I have, and I have come across so many different tracks throughout different parts of the national forest here in Virginia. I got a collection of tracks, and my thing is I also collect other wildlife tracks, bears, for example. I even made tracks and casts out of my own feet, and I use them for comparison. I like to do that compared to, the thing is, when I do a cast of a big alleged Bigfoot track that I come across, yeah, they don't come out as clear as my foot track that I made for comparison because it depends on the terrain and everything, and the soil. But my thing is, again, if you're going to disagree with me, that's fine. Don't get ugly about it because you don't, by you getting ugly about it and disagreeing or more or less saying that I'm wrong or anybody's wrong, but don't, at least provide the evidence that would lean against me. That's all that's what I would ask. And there's people out there, and they're probably, who knows, there might be people that will listen to this later on and like, well, this guy's a lunatic, he don't know what he's talking about. Well, tell me, provide the proof and evidence that I'm a lunatic. Yeah, I admit I ramble a lot because I have so much information. I don't know how to keep it together sometimes. So I know I'm very random when I throw things out there, but I just again, I look at things differently. I review things different than others. Basically, when I throw information out there, I'm just throwing my side out there. Everybody has their own side, but all I tell people is at least consider. You don't have to follow through. You don't have to believe. Just consider my side of things and the way I look at things. You know, um, you know. But for those who are serious and want to take this serious, I mean, let science uh, be a part of your studies. Let science be a part of your tool. Let science be a tool to your research. Uh, and with that being said, remember, try to use a process of elimination. Do some comparisons. Make some notes for yourself. Because for those who go out there and point at a broken tree, or this one happens to have a little bit of twist in it, that's definitely going to be Bigfoot. I mean, be a little bit more objective. Question what you're looking at. Question yourself. And I have no problem people questioning me. Question the hell out of me. I mean, question me. If you don't understand what I'm saying, if you're confused by what I share, ask me. I'll try to explain it a different way. I'll try to find a way to give it illustrations. I've been fortunate to give a few good illustrations out there here and there in the past, but that's one thing I always get people to do. Question yourself, question those who are presenting, and don't be afraid to rule something out. Don't be afraid to be objective. Because I personally find it more exciting and more thrilling if we could rule out everything. When we are out there in the woods, boots on the ground, and we come across something, that's where the adventure starts. Let's start pinpointing, let's start listing, naming every possibility that could possibly create this or do this or make this. And then, if you come to the conclusion that, there's no way this could have done this, there's no way this could have done that, and then again, you have to question yourself, could they really not do that? Are they, like, for example, bear activity, bear destruction, bear, a lot of what bears do, people underestimate bears. They don't know, they have no clue what a bear can really do. They don't understand how strong a bear can be. Can a bear break a tree? Very, very much so. They're very famous for that. They're very famous for uprooting trees and pushing trees and bending trees. Can a bear twist a tree? Absolutely. If they play around with it enough, especially if a tree, regardless if it's a bear or weather did this. One thing I've pointed out numerous times, especially with big trees, I'll use a small tree, for example. Say a round tree, fresh green tree, 4 or 5 inches round, very, tall and slender all the way, this over 30, 40 feet tall. If a small bear, if a small bear that had enough weight got to the top. Now, I used to do this as a kid. I used to love climbing trees as a kid. One thing I used to do, I used to climb up a tall tree, a very slim, tall tree. And when I got to the top, I would let my weight, my momentum bend over, pull the tree over. And as I'm at the top, I would hold on to that tree and let that tree bring me down. It wasn't a fast, drop, but that was something I used to do as a kid. Picture me climbing up to the top of a tree, 20 feet, 20 feet up in the air, and I'm at the very top of it. And, you swing enough where the tree and your weight carries it over. Bears do the same thing. And people don't realize that. Bears are like kids in many ways. They're very playful on trees. Most of the time when they're destructive on trees, it's usually a dead rock tree where they're trying to bust it open to get to the bugs and grubs. That's one of their main diets they love, But so there's a lot of things you really need to take the time to consider and try to rule out the best you can. So when you say something can't be done by this, double guess it. Think again. Think of it. If you have such an imagination to point Bigfoot did all this, then you could have the imagination to consider the real truth, the real other possibility. So, just that's all I'm trying to tell people. Just be careful when you go out there and, try not to give Bigfoot the credit first. Try to rule out everything else. So
Yeah, no,
yeah.
absolutely, man. I think so. That's a good point. Is because a lot of people, when they go and investigate, they instantly feel Bigfoot is the culprit for this noise, or it's responsible for this. When really, there's also zoological animals, and then they're so blown back when they see these other animals, and like, holy shit, it's a cougar, and it's like, the mindset of going into the woods is heavy with paranoia, and it gets me on to this other subject I want to ask you about. As you know, it's very easy to get lost in the woods. It's very easy for somebody in the forest to lose their composition of where they're at.
Oh yeah.
When we look at the missing 411, for example, do you think that some of these cases are attributed to natural causes, or do you feel that there are cryptids that are involved in some of these missing 411 reports, or do you think it's a bit of both?
Well, it's funny you asked that because we were in a podcast discussion just this past week regarding the very same thing, and it was supposed to be a pre-show to the actual debate that took place that originally got postponed, but we didn't really get to hear the debate that actually ended up happening a few days later. But with our discussion, we got into a pretty in-depth discussion, and now the thing is, a lot of it can be natural causes. Now, when I say natural causes, when somebody gets lost out in the woods for a long period of time, and especially if they don't know their sense of direction, because there's a lot of people that don't know their sense of direction. And if they're in a deep, remote forest somehow and they get turned around where they're out there in the middle of nowhere, and you got to understand a person's, well, what starts to sink in with them. First of all, they're getting scared. They're scared, especially if the temperatures are cold, and they start panicking. And then over time, if they're out there for a few days, they're going to get dehydrated. When you get dehydrated, yeah, there's a lot of little things that will happen to a person's mind and their body. Their organs start to function a little weaker, and disorientation takes place. So there's a lot of information that happens, and when they become weak, they become vulnerable. When they become vulnerable, they're a direct target to a predator. Um, I believe that's a lot of the situation. That could be a big part of it. Now, with the whole missing 411 thing, I'll be honest, I have not read the books or seen the movies, but I'm very familiar with a lot of the scenarios of the cases, and it wasn't until recently where they didn't really start pointing towards Bigfoot. But over the years, people use missing 411 as a lot of people in general already related it and used the missing 411 information as possible alleged Bigfoot abductions and all this and that. With that being said, I believe that's wrong to consider that without any proof whatsoever. We don't have no proof that Bigfoot's related to any of this. Could he be? Yeah, I believe that's a good possibility, but then again, we don't know. So again, there's a lot of factors that we consider these missing 411s. I mean, they could be murder cases that just are left unsolved, where the body's missing, but there's no evidence of what did it, who did it, what, where they put the body and all that. Because a lot of cases where, from what I understand, a lot of the bodies and remains were actually found, and not all of them were found, to my understanding. So I want to be careful how I share my thoughts on this, because again, I did not see the movie or the videos. But again, a lot of people were pointing, using the 411 thing. I've seen it shared over the years since the missing 411 information has come out. A lot of the stories and the reports in there date back from many years ago. So then the big debate is, a lot of people were saying, well, was David Pilates using the missing 411 for Bigfoot? Because again, people like to use Bigfoot for money sales. So, but I don't know. I kind of feel wrong sharing any information or anything regarding that, considering Mr. Pilates just recently lost his son, and so I want to be careful how I present things, because I almost feel like I'll be guilty if I share my true thoughts and opinions about things. But and again, So to go off subject, a little bit related to that, a lot of people use their beliefs and their stories and their books. You know, um, could it be for money? Could it be for fame? Could be a number of things, but there's a lot of things to consider. I just think these Mr. 411 cases and everything, they could be a combination of all the above. I believe it's safe to say all the above. So, um, you know, I don't know. I know it's kind of, I don't know, it's almost kind of a touchy subject in a way. Um, it's kind of hard for me to really pinpoint my actual opinion on it. So
Yeah,
that's
no,
just the way I look at it.
and that's the thing too, is that with missing 411, out of respect for David Paulides and what he's going through, but a lot of the reports happen in a lot of national parks, as we know, and as you know, national parks have a lot of mass, a lot of acre that surrounds
Oh
them,
yeah.
that are very capable for a creature such as a Bigfoot to be able to live. And yeah, it's always possible for somebody to go missing in the woods, and also too, it's also very simple for somebody to get attacked by a large animal in the woods as well. And not even just the Bigfoot, going back to even when people don't like, and they have Bigfoot in their head and they necessarily ignore any animal out in the woods. They think of a bear, and it's like, bears that come at you, they don't know what you are, and the same thing with like cougars, bobcats, and even panthers in a sense too, depending on where you're at. I mean, everybody's got these reports of people that are getting attacked by something big, and it's like, wow. But to go missing in certain harbors and woods, it makes me wonder as well. And it is something that I also think about, but I guess maybe too, we won't have an answer on that as well, considering the fact that it's still just a blatant mystery. But Dan, I want to get towards our penultimate discussion here, and that is about your organization. I know we briefly touched about it early on, but can you tell us a little bit more about it? Where can people reach you at? Where can people learn a little bit more about ECBRO and what it is?
Well, the ECBRO, we are the East Coast Bigfoot Researchers Organization. I officially founded the organization back in 2010. Yeah, after conducting some research and being involved, and then after joining social media, I established a group because I was involved with the Bigfoot research before I got familiar with social media. And then, of course, I didn't realize how big Bigfoot was on social media. So that's where I decided to start using social media and networking to reach out, to other people and getting familiar with people over the years. So, but as far as the ECBRO, we're found all over social media. I have the ECBRO fan page. I have several other pages. I have the ECBRO Discovery Project Facebook page. We have the main ECBRO Facebook group. And also, you could check out my blog site, which I haven't updated that in a while, but there's a few interesting stories and blogs and some of my views on certain topics, involved in the Bigfoot world. You can go to ecbro.wordpress.com. That's my blog site. Again, I haven't updated in a while, but you can check that out. We have our annual ECBRO Virginia Bigfoot Conference event page. You can follow that and stay up to date with our Facebook event that we host here in Virginia. Also, coming up in the month of May, at the end of May, I am holding a week-long Bigfoot campout. We will do some exploring and everything that. It's free to the public. There is a Facebook event created for that, so you can look that up. Well, let's see. Basically, if you want other information, you check out my YouTube channel, which is Bigfoot Zone with ECBRO in parentheses. So yeah, check that out. Follow that. I do have some interesting field videos on there. A few my self-made documentaries. If you, when you first jump on the YouTube channel, there's a lot of different podcasts, so you have to scroll through a lot of the podcasts. A lot of my field videos in the past. The latest field video I have on there was actually from 2019. It was actually Christmas, the day before Christmas, and then Christmas Day of 2019. Um, yeah, that was one of my bigger viewed documentaries I had on there. So, but I've actually recently reshared them on Facebook, so you could find them on my timeline. So, yeah, and also if you want to find me in general, I've been on several other podcasts throughout the years. So you could just go under Google, do a Google search, put my name in, Daniel Benoit, ECBRO, and you'll be surprised. You'll keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. You'll see all kinds of stuff about me on there. So I have authored a couple books. My most recent one is actually a field guide. It's a small booklet. It's the Wildlife and Bigfoot Field Guide in Objective View. You can check that out. You can find that on Amazon or Lulu.com. Also, my other big book is Learning Bigfoot, Going Against the Grains of Science. And then there's actually, I do have a children's book out there. It's a coloring book, but also it's some basic education in there with some pictures of wildlife with their tracks. So, young children get involved, they get identified tracks and with their wildlife. And you can paint some pictures of Bigfoot and other wildlife scenes in there. So it's a pretty cool little book. And so, yeah, I'm out there. Just do a Google search. You come across me. If you're interested in coming out to our event, either the camping event or the Bigfoot conference that we're planning for June 26th and June 27th right here in Virginia. Yeah, you could check that out on Facebook, or if you have any questions, you can email me directly at ecbro98@gmail.com. And I'm always free and available to chat most of the time. I mean, I work during the day. And, weekends, I'm pretty busy. I either hanging out with my grandson here and or spending time with my girlfriend and her kids. So, but that's me. I'm pretty much a busy person on and off, and I'm a down to earth person, very laid back, easy to talk to. So if you ever have any questions, I won't bite your head off, So, and yeah, just give me a try. I'm very easy to get along with. So, yeah, that's about it with me. So.
Absolutely no, and like you and I, we have a good relationship. We've been knowing each other for 4 years, so we've had a very good chemistry back and forth discussing topics. So you and me both. Anybody out there who is looking at trying to find truth and wants to get a good resource and take a look at Daniel's work, he's got a very phenomenal track record of information and a good deliverance of presentation, especially at these conferences and what he does for the field also in the Virginia area. But Dan, before we conclude, do you have any closing comments that you'd like to share?
Well, I'll throw this out there, and I may come across as a broken record. I repeat myself a lot, and maybe I get that from my father. But when it comes to Bigfoot, and what I like to share with people, when you're out there, if you plan on getting involved, or if you already are involved, for those of us like me, myself, and I care about what other people do. And the main thing is you got to have fun with it. But if you want to take this serious at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, question everything, analyze, take the time, don't rush into everything, don't rush your thoughts. Process of elimination is very important. And one thing I'll throw out there, I share this all the time, ever since I've heard this quote and this saying from Les Stroud, I have a lot of respect for Les Stroud. And one thing he always states, and I share it too, because I believe in this: don't fall prey to deception. Don't fall prey to deception. I'll never forget that. It's basically what everything I've been throwing out there to you is, don't go out there with a mindset of Bigfoot on your, Bigfoot's responsible for everything we find, because he's not. And that's the truth. And that is a fact. Bigfoot is not responsible for everything that people say he is. And another thing too, I'll throw out there for closing. One question people ask me a lot is Bigfoot dangerous? And that goes for any wildlife, any predator. don't ever put yourself in that position for that species or that subject to become aggressive. Would you ever corner a venomous snake without it biting you? Would you ever approach a mountain lion? So if you ever become you come encounter with any wildlife, don't put yourself in that position. Back away from it. Observe it and get out. So, yeah, just don't ever put yourself in that position. Anything could be dangerous. The most dangerous species on Earth is a human. So,
I second
yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we got dangerous humans in high offices right now. So, but yeah. So, but yeah, that's all I have to say for now. Or in the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that.
Ditto to that, man. Oh man, no, listen, Dan, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, and as always, I believe in what you do, and I strongly admire your profession and love for this, and I wish you all the best of success with this and for your organization to grow in the coming years, as well as also to develop the bigger bond in the community and note that your information is informative and that people are following it and that they understand where you're coming from. So best of all luck to you, man, down the road with everything. And you're always more than welcomed to speak with me anytime in the subject matter of cryptozoology or other things non-cryptid related.
Absolutely. And one more quick thing too for the listeners, as I mentioned, the YouTube channel Bigfoot Zone ECBRO. Here in this coming year, one of the projects I am working on is doing a series. I'm not sure exactly how successful it'll be, but I plan on doing a series of different field video documentaries and investigating other reports and filming them. So I've already got a couple dedicated people that will be participating with me. There'll be solo documentaries with just me, but I'll have others involved doing some investigating and exploring and looking for evidence, and hopefully be able to provide and show good stuff to you guys. There'll be both day and night investigations, and so again, these field videos we plan on doing a series throughout the year on the YouTube channel. So it's something to keep in mind. By midsummer, hopefully, we're hoping to have it ready by the Virginia Bigfoot Conference. There is a documentary, independent film director. He's been doing some filming with me, and we are working on a Bigfoot documentary. We've already done a lot of filming with it, so our goal is to have it prepared and ready for that event. So, and there's other projects involved with other paranormal groups that want to get involved with me and do short little segments. They're looking to pull Bigfoot into their series. So there's different paranormal TV programs that are actually local here in Virginia. They're pretty cool people. They're actually working with me on something. So, it's not going to be too big, but it should be interesting. So as that gets moved along, I'll be able to share more information about that later, and I'll post an update on my YouTube, Facebook, and wherever else I can. I'm also on Twitter. I don't post as much on Twitter as I should, but you can find me on Twitter as well under my name, ECBRO, Daniel ECBRO. So, but there's a few things to look forward to in the future. I try to keep things, people want to see more field videos. I'm going to work on doing it. So, so that's about it.
There you have it. And also too, everybody please check out Daniel's website, his blog, as well as also his YouTube, and very informative information. Daniel, man, you have a fantastic evening. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Be safe.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks again for having me, Chris. I really appreciate this.